Every single time this 6-year-old girl sees a man or woman in uniform, she stops walking, stands up straight, and salutes them. Even strangers, even in the middle of a grocery store. People filmed it, thinking it was just adorable. Nobody knew the real reason until her teacher asked her one simple question. What she said made a Marine twice her size start crying in the produce aisle. This is her story. Her name was Emily. She was 6 years old, lived in a small town in Ohio, and by all accounts was a normal, cheerful kid. She liked dinosaurs, she was scared of thunderstorms, and she'd only just learned to ride a bike without training wheels. But there was one thing about Emily that made her different from every other kid on her street. Whenever she saw someone wearing a military uniform, active duty, veteran, didn't matter. She would stop whatever she was doing. She'd straighten her back, bring her small hand up to her forehead, and hold a perfect salute until the person either saluted back or smiled at her. At first, people thought her parents had taught her to do it as a cute party trick. A few videos of her saluting strangers at the county fair had been posted online and gotten some attention. People calling her the tiny patriot, sharing it because it was heartwarming. But her parents hadn't taught her that. Nobody had. Emily's mother, Sarah, said she first noticed it when Emily was 4. They were at the airport, picking up Sarah's brother, and a group of soldiers in uniform walked past on their way to a connecting flight. Emily let go of her mother's hand, walked several steps toward them, and saluted a soldier she had never met in her life. The soldier, surprised, saluted her back. Emily smiled, turned around, and walked back to her mother like nothing unusual had happened. Sarah asked her, "Why did you do that, sweetie?" Emily just shrugged and said, "Because he needed it." Sarah didn't think much of it at the time. Kids say strange things. But it kept happening. At the grocery store, at church, at the park, when an elderly man wearing a faded Vietnam veteran cap walked by. Every time, same thing. Stop, stand tall, salute. Her parents started to wonder if maybe she'd picked it up from a cartoon or a school assembly. They asked her teacher. They asked her grandparents. Nobody had taught her this. It was Emily's kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Hallbrook, who finally asked the question that changed everything. The school had invited a local veterans group to speak at a Veterans Day assembly. Emily, sitting cross-legged on the gym floor with the rest of her class, stood up in the middle of the assembly, without permission, without being called on, and saluted every single veteran on the stage, one at a time, holding it for several seconds each. The gym went quiet. Some of the veterans on stage saluted back, visibly moved. One older man, a Marine veteran named Walter, had to look away and wipe his eyes. After the assembly, Mrs. Hallbrook knelt down next to Emily and asked gently, "Emily, that was so respectful. Can I ask, why do you always salute the soldiers and veterans you see?" Emily thought about it for a moment, the way kids do when they're deciding whether something is a secret or not. Then she said, "Because my angel told me to." Mrs. Hallbrook, thinking this was simply childhood imagination, smiled and asked, "Your angel?" Emily nodded. "My daddy. He's my angel now. He was a soldier. He said soldiers get lonely because people forget to say thank you. So now I say thank you for him. Every time." Here is what Mrs. Hallbrook didn't know, and what most of the town didn't know either. Emily's biological father, Corporal Daniel Reyes, had been killed in action 3 years earlier, when Emily was not yet 2 years old. She had almost no memories of him. She'd been far too young. Sarah had remarried a wonderful man 2 years later, someone who loved Emily as his own daughter. But she had always made sure Emily knew about her father, who he was, what he did, and that he had been brave. What Sarah hadn't realized was just how deeply that story had settled into her daughter's heart. Emily had taken the idea of her father, a soldier who got lonely and who people needed to thank, and turned it into something she could do for every soldier and veteran she ever saw. In her 6-year-old mind, saluting a stranger in uniform was the same as saluting her own father. Every uniform was in some small way him. When Mrs. Hallbrook gently explained this to the school, and later to a local news reporter who'd heard about the assembly, the story spread through the town in a way nobody expected. Walter, the Marine veteran who had wiped his eyes on stage, reached out to Sarah afterward. He told her that he had lost his own son, also a soldier, for years earlier. He hadn't been saluted by anyone in a long time. Not because people didn't care, but because most people simply don't think to do it for an old man buying milk at the grocery store. That little girl, he said, gave me back something I didn't know I was missing. After the local news picked up the story, something remarkable happened. Veterans from 3 surrounding counties started reaching out. Some just to say the story had moved them, others asking if they could meet Emily in person. The town organized a small gathering at the community center that following month. Over 30 veterans showed up, from a 95-year-old Korean War veteran in a wheelchair to a 24-year-old who had returned from deployment just weeks earlier. Emily, in her own small way, walked down the line and saluted every single one of them. Some laughed. Some cried. One young veteran, who later admitted to Sarah that he had been struggling badly since coming home, said it was the first time in months he'd felt like what he did actually mattered to someone. Walter started a small tradition after that day. Every Veterans Day, he brings Emily to the local VFW hall, where she salutes every veteran in the room, one at a time, exactly as her father had once been saluted. Emily is 9 years old now. She still salutes every uniform she sees, though these days she understands a little more of why. Her mother says she started asking more questions about her father, wanting to know what he was like, what he loved, what his voice might have sounded like. She keeps one photo of him on her nightstand, young, smiling, in his uniform, the same salute Emily now gives to strangers every single day. Walter, now in his 70s, calls her his honorary granddaughter. He says that some debts can never really be repaid, not to the ones who didn't come home, and not to the ones who did and still carry it quietly. But every time a small girl in Ohio raises her hand to her forehead for a stranger in uniform, in some way, a small piece of that debt gets paid anyway. If this story moved you, take a moment today to thank a veteran you see. You never know what it might mean to them. Subscribe for more real stories about the quiet heroes who don't always get the thank you they deserve. See you in the next one.